I'm not telling you that right now. All right. Ready for our speaker tonight? All right. Hang on a second. We're going to go over here. Okay, can all of you hear me?
Yeah.
Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What? So I am really excited tonight about our speaker that's going to speak to all of you tonight. And his name is Mr. Biz. He actually wrote a book, Pathway to Profits, and can really give you a lot of dynamic information about growing your business and building your business. Crazy thing is, I got a call about 2 hours ago, and he had an unexpected situation occur and could not make it. But what do we do as leaders running your own business? We improvise, adapt, conquer, overcome, right? So I think that's what we should do, and I did. So I talked to this guy. He was willing to come. He's been downstairs doing shots, I think, for like the last 4 hours. A little nervous about that. But let me see if I can get him up here. Matt? Hey, Matt, you down there? This set me back a little bit. Let's maybe give him some cheer, like you clapping maybe. So. Hey, Matt Foley! Matt Foley! You down there, Matt Foley? Matt Foley! Hey, come on up! Down there! How you doing? Great! All right. How's everybody doing? Good. Now, as Corey probably told you, my name is Matt Foley. And I am a motivational speaker. And before we get started, I should probably tell you a little bit about myself, so you know where I'm coming from. The river. You've seen me before, I see. Okay. First off, I am 35 years old. I am thrice divorced, and I live in a van down by the river. Now, many of you out there might be thinking right now, I'm going to go out in the world. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to grab it by the tail. I'm going to wrap it in a knot, and I'm going to jam it right in my pocket. Unfortunately, I have to inform you, you're probably, as you go out into the world, not going to amount to squat. You are more likely to be eating a steady diet of government cheese, joining me in my van down by the river. No one wants to live in a van down by the river, right? So maybe we'll put Matt away for the night. It's tiring being Chris Farley, and he's got like 150 pounds on him. So as Corey had mentioned before, my name is actually Ken Wentworth, not Matt Foley. I've slimmed down a lot since the Matt Foley days. Some people call me Mr. Biz. I'm an on-demand CFO, so I work with business owners, help them run their businesses more profitably, more efficiently. I've written a couple of books, Pathway to Profits, How to Be a Cash Flow Pro, and I have a radio show, Mr. Biz Radio. I've been doing that for about 3 years. And usually when I get up and talk to groups like this, I talk a lot about business stuff. Cash flow, budgeting, things like that. But no one wants to hear about that, right? We're here to have fun, everyone's having drinks. Especially since we're heading towards the end of the year, I want to talk to you guys about something I think is really timely, and that is how to tap into your full potential. Now I know you've heard a lot of people talk about this type of topic, but I think I've got some things to share with you that are things that I've been able to use that will help. And I'm here to tell you, don't take this the wrong way, but most of you, if not all, are only scratching the surface, if that. And I'm going to give you some examples of how I've been able to use. I'm going to give you 4 steps, only 4, not 8, not 10, not get you all confused, only 4 steps to be able to take advantage of your full potential. I'm going to give you some examples of how I've been able to do that, and then we're going to talk about how you have this in you as well. We all have this in us. And so the first thing we need to do is, I got a question. And comedic answers are allowed, okay? So if I were to tell you that I've broken a world record, what world record do you think that I've broken? Anybody?
Bubble gum chew. Bubbles.
I like that. I like how you think. I like that. Any other guesses?
Motivational speeches.
I wouldn't be living in a van down by the river if I did that, right? All right, so let me give you a little bit more of a hint. How much, and this is not a joke question, it's actually a legit question. If you had to guess, how much do you think that I could bench press? I won't be offended. Probably.
280.
I mean, I can hear what you say.
305.
350. What if I told you that I was able to bench press 400 pounds? You think that's pretty good? Pretty good? What if I told you I was able to bench press 500 pounds?
No.
Pretty good? No? Lying? Full crap? What if I told you that I actually have bench pressed 515 pounds at a body weight of 196 pounds? That's the truth, that's not a question. So don't laugh at it, it's actually true. And I'm not saying that, and I've actually broken 6 world records, not 1. And I don't tell you all that to brag, I'm telling you that to show some examples of how I've been able to do it. I'm a regular old guy, right? Just a regular dude, just like everyone else. You guys have a lot more talent than I have, I'm sure. But using some of these things, I was able to do that. This action number 1 that I'm going to give you is thinking bold and starting with yes. I know it sounds simple. It sounds very simple, right? However, how many people you work with or you're around on a regular basis, might be a family member, they start with no. What I mean by that is as soon as you have a new idea, what's the first thing they do? They tell you why it won't work, right? And it might be subtle. It might not be like, oh, that's a crazy idea, but they might say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That's the next thing. They're not starting with yes. I had this happen. I used to work at JP Chase. I worked there for 20 plus years. And we had a situation where we had a project we had to do. So I went to the team and I said, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And kind of the guy who was the leader of the team said, yeah, we can't do that. So what do you mean you can't do it? Because in my vocabulary, can is another way of saying won't. So I want to figure this out. What do you mean by can? I said, well, he said, well, I said, well, let me ask you this. So the CEO of Chase is Jamie Dimon. I said, Paul, if you went back to your desk right now, your phone rang and you picked it up and it was none other than Jamie Dimon himself. And he said, Paul, I need you to do this project for me. Could you get it done? He looked at me matter-of-factly and said, well, yeah, what we'd have to do is, like 5 people would have to work like 20 hours a day for 5 days, but we could do it. I said, aha, so it can be done. It can be done. Now, I don't want people to have to work 20 hours a day for 5 days, but now we've started with yes, it can be done. So now let's figure out how. So what if we had 10 people work on it for 10 days? A lot more reasonable, right? If we would have started with no, that project would have never gotten done. Never gotten done, right? So again, taking that to, and I'll side note to that, I use it with my kids. A little less powerful when my kids were smaller, and they would say, anyone who's got small kids, feel free to use this one. It's fantastic. They would say, Dad, I can't do that. I'd say, man, that's too bad. If I gave you a bowl of ice cream, you think you could do that? Well, yeah, I could do it. Get over there and do it, right? Works like a charm, works like a charm. So, as I was doing, and I use this actually with my lifting. So the first time I bench pressed 275 pounds, close to a guest we had over here, I told all the guys I trained with, I'm going to bench press 500 pounds. Guess what they said? They started with no. They all looked at me like I was insane. Pretty much like a lot of you guys looked at me when I told you that I bench pressed 515 pounds, right? Which I completely understand. However, I didn't leave it no. I wanted to start with yes. So if anything else, it drove me more. I'm going to figure this out. So as I continued going along, I moved into the second action. And I figured out that I can bench press 275 pounds, and 500 is a heck of a long way away from that. And I kind of know a little bit about this because I got the 275, but I don't have the knowledge to get to 500. So what am I going to do? I reached out to someone who had won 2 world titles, lived in Iowa. He held a world record himself. I found someone who was already an expert and already successful at something that I wanted to do. I don't need to try to recreate the wheel here, right? Let me find this guy. I reached out to him, and he said, sure. I went up to Iowa and trained with him for a week. Stayed in contact with him throughout the whole training process on my way to getting to 500. And it leads me to, so this second one is seeking expert advice where you need it. You don't need to recreate the wheel. And there's a funny Steve Jobs story, actually, around this. It's one of my favorite quotes. So Steve Jobs was 13 years old, and literally 13 years old, and he decided he's going to make some computer thing. Let's call it a flux capacitor, okay? I'll date myself a little bit. Let's call it a flux capacitor. So he gets, this will date it even further, all this is dating Steve Jobs. He got the phone book out, looked up Bill Hewlett's number of Hewlett-Packard. 13-year-old kid. Hey, I might as well go to the top, right? Calls Bill Hewlett. Guess what? Bill Hewlett answers the phone. He says, I'm 13-year-old Steve Jobs. I'm trying to build a flux capacitor. I was wondering if you have any spare parts you might be able to give me. Bill Hewlett was so taken aback by it, positively, I shouldn't say taken aback, that he not only took the call from a 13-year-old kid, he not only gave him spare parts, but he gave him a job. He said, do you want to come and work here during the summer when you're off school? Now, that one phone call, and by the way, the Steve Jobs quote is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So as far as seeking expert advice, don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Oh, he'll never return my call. Oh, she'll never return my email. The worst thing they could do is say no. The best thing they could do is say yes. Do you think that that one phone call that Steve Jobs made at 13 years of age, what did that do for his career? What if he just said no? What if he starts with no. I'm not going to call him. He'll never return my phone call. He may have never got into computing. We may not have iPods. We may not have cell phones. Who knows, right? All because he started with yes and he sought expert help. Very, very important. So as I was going through lifting, I started competing. Guy said, you got to start competing, right? I'm a competitive person. Sounds fantastic. Let's do it. So as I started competing, I figured out right away, there's weight classes, right, and weightlifting. So I need to make sure that I'm optimizing my body weight as best that I can. So again, I'm not an expert at that. So how do I do? What do I do? I find someone who's an expert in weight manipulation. I find a book. I found several books. Found one that I loved. What did I do? I took the Steve Jobs approach. And at the time, I had never heard the quote about it. Just dumb luck, I guess. I reached out to the author. Ended up talking with him for probably 6 or 8 hours over, an extended period of time, learning everything I could about weight manipulation from this guy. Now, I got another question for everyone. How many of you out there, at some point or another in your lives, have gone on a diet and lost 10 pounds? 10 or more pounds? How many? Almost everyone. So you guys have experience with this. What would you think would be a good amount of weight to lose in a week? You went to the gym all the times you're supposed to go. You didn't miss any training sessions. You nailed your diet. Spot on. Timing, macronutrients, carbohydrates, everything. You nailed it. What is a good week for weight loss? What do you
7
think?
pounds.
7 pounds.
15, 1.5 pounds.
1 pound a day.
1.5. Someone's not aiming high. Okay, I'm just saying. Someone's not aiming high. Someone's not starting with yes back there.
No, I'm starting with yes. That's the healthy weight loss on average. 1.5 pounds.
Well, yeah, that's true. That is very true, actually. So, what about a day? So, let's say the average thrown out there was around 10 pounds for a week. What do you think you can lose in a day? One day, 24 hours. Again, you're spot on, nailed everything. What do you think you can lose in 24 hours?
3 pounds. 1 pound.
I lost 2 pounds in the steam room today.
I didn't think you were going to say steam room, and I'm glad you didn't say that. I thought you were going to say. So, what if I told you that, again, applying these actions I'm telling you guys about, I was able to lose 17 pounds a day. 24 hours, I lost 17 pounds.
That's not healthy.
My mom's a nurse, and so is my wife, and they both agree with you. However, I was monitored all along the way. I wouldn't do anything. I mean, it was fairly extreme. So I went from 215 pounds down to 198. What happens is you weigh in 24 hours before you compete. So I wanted to lose that weight at the last possible minute, weigh in, and then here's a funny side story to it. I had everything planned out, how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to get there. I want to be done a little bit early so I can be first in line for weigh-ins. Because as soon as you weigh in, you can go crazy, right? Start rehydrating, eating, and all that good stuff. I'm sitting in line, waiting to weigh in. The guy next to me shows up. Second guy shows up. He's sitting down. He's like, "Oh my gosh." Whew. So finally, I'm just trying to stay in my own zone, right? I'm just trying to stay in my lane, get my weight in. Finally, I look over because he keeps making all these sounds, right? I said, "Hey, how you doing? You all right?" He's like, "Oh my gosh, this killed me. I had to lose a bunch of weight." And I'm like, "Oh man, yeah, I lost some weight too." I said, "How much did you lose?" He's like, "I've shed 4 pounds in the last week." And I was like, "That's awesome." In my head, I'm like, "That's cute. I lost that like last hour, but whatever. Everyone's got goals, right?" I'm not telling you these things to make it, brag or anything like that. But the seeking expert advice is so important because and so often we don't do that. First of all, you don't want to ask for help, and second of all, you are afraid that someone's going to tell you no. Don't worry about that. I've used this when I first started my business. I used it obviously in lifting. I used it when I first started my business. I found someone who does what I do. They're in Missouri, 15 years in the business, wildly successful. I reached out to him, saved me all kind of time, right? It accelerated my growth. I started my radio show. Let me tell you, radio is not as easy as you think. At least to be good, it's not as easy as you think. So I did my first show. I go home. On my drive home, I'm like, there's 3 segments to the show. I'm like, the first segment was pretty gruff. But I think the last 2, I kind of hit my stride a little bit. I got home later that evening, I had a chance to listen to it. To tell you that it was awful would be way too kind. It was, it was so bad. I immediately went out to my wife and I said, I have to figure this out and I have to get better at it, or I'm not going to torture anyone with having to listen to me. Anyone who would choose to listen, I would rather listen to 5 people scratch their nails down a chalkboard for 30 minutes than listen to how bad the show was. And what did I do? I reached out to 4 nationally syndicated radio show hosts, and every single one of them got back to me. I ended up on the phone with 2 of them, emailed with one, or the other 2 I emailed with, talked to them extensively, got a lot of tips, hopefully got a lot better. You guys can be the judge of that. I'm sure it's better than the first one, okay? So I've used it with all these things. So seek that expert advice. It is so critically important to be able to do that and not be afraid that someone's going to tell you no. It's the worst thing they can do. So as we get further along, getting back to the lifting, I'm continuing along. I'm getting better. I'm getting more competitive, and I decide I need to add another element to it. And that brings me to the third action. And third action is to create accountability. Again, it sounds obvious, but let me tell you some ways I was able to do that that are not maybe as obvious as some of the other things you've heard before. So first of all, you can obviously have personal accountability. But what I chose to do was to have other people hold me accountable, and not the normal way. I don't walk up to you and say, hey, I need you to hold me accountable. I need you to make sure you're staying on me. I didn't do that. I did a little Jedi mind trick on myself and people in my circle that I talk to on a regular basis. A lot of people, because not a lot of people do powerlifting and do it at a high level and things like that, so a lot of people would ask me about it, right? Anyone who asked me, I would tell them, every single one of them, what my goal was. Hey Ken, when's your next competition? World Championships in July. Awesome. What are you planning on lifting? Planning on lifting 500 pounds. I would tell anyone who asked about it, absolutely anyone. Why? Because when I run into that person after July, what's one of the things they're going to ask me? Hey, didn't you have a competition? How'd that go? Now, let me ask you another question. How many of you in here, it's a trick question, like to disappoint people? I like to disappoint people, right? No one likes to disappoint people, right? I wanted a bunch of people to know, because that would put pressure on me. I don't want to disappoint anybody, let alone myself, right? Disappointing yourself is bad enough, but I don't want to disappoint anyone else. So having them hold me accountable. And I did that not only in that way, verbally. Every competition, I would go get a custom t-shirt made. It would have some sort of motivational saying on it and a huge number on it, on the chest and on the back. and it was the amount I wanted to lift. And I wore it to the gym all the time. People at the gym, if they've never seen it before, they're like, "What the heck is, what's the 500 on your chest for? What the heck is that?" And I would tell them what it was for. Now they know. Now they're going to hold me accountable. And now they see me when I'm getting ready for the national championships the next year, and they see that they know what it is, right? Now they're going to hold me accountable. Holding myself personally accountable. I used to get, those little 3x5 index cards. I used to get those, and I would print out in giant bold letters, or numbers, not letters, the weight I wanted to lift. I would print out a handful. I put one of them on the mirror above my sink in the bathroom. So literally, that thing's staring me in the face every time I'm standing at the sink. Brushing my teeth, shaving, everything, right? Staring right at me. Reminding me of what I'm here for. Reminding what I need to do. I would take one and tape it to the dash of my truck. Now when I'm driving, I see it. Even when I'm not trying, I'm looking over here. That thing's looking at me. I know it's looking at me. I would tape one to the bottom of my monitor. It worked. So that now it's looking at me again, right? And indirectly, someone gets into my truck. Hey Ken, what the heck do you have an index card on your dashboard? I would tell them. Now they're going to hold me accountable. Now I got a whole group of people holding me accountable. I even took it a step further when I got further along to keep myself. So something I would train obviously year round, but the training cycles getting ready for competition was 16 to 18 weeks, long time to stay motivated. So I would, there's little books that are about this big, you literally can fit in your pocket. I would carry one of those around with me. At the end of every day, I had to write down 3 things that I did during that day to get me closer to that goal. Whatever that goal weight was, whatever it was. So I was holding myself accountable. And I knew at the end of the day I had to do that. I do it with business now. I have an advisory council for my businesses. And I let them know what a goal is. And I also let them know that every first day of the month, you're going to get an email from me with an update on where I'm at. I don't want to disappoint anybody, let alone myself. I don't want to be the person that has to send the crappy email that says, I stunk, I didn't get it done this month. Right? I'm creating the accountability, which, again, very, very important. So that's 3. So far we've talked about being bold and starting with yes. We've talked about the second one of seeking expert advice when you need to. Don't be afraid of someone that someone might tell you no. And then we talked about creating accountability. Now this one we're going to get into is where I'm going to prove to you that each of you have this in you as well. You could lose 17 pounds in a day. I don't recommend it, bless you. I don't recommend it, but you could do it too. And here's how. So the last one is something that I call, you have to take an action that is consistent perseverance, what I call it. Consistent perseverance. That's how I lost 17 pounds in a day. That's how I bench pressed 500 pounds, all that crazy stuff. That's how I've achieved so many of my business goals. Consistent perseverance. And here's how you can do it. And here's how you've already done it. Think back of times in your life when you've gone all in on something. And I don't mean like, yeah, let's do it. I mean like, I am not going to be stopped. I will make this happen. Now for most people, that's probably only once or twice in your life. If you're being completely honest with yourself, you've all gone all the way in. Of those times, let's say you got those 1 or 2 times, you got those in your head right now. Have you ever not been successful? I don't have to answer. I don't have to look at your heads. I don't have to look at your nodding. Because I can guarantee you were successful. You know why I know? Because you would have used, if you were truly all in, you would have used consistent perseverance. You would not stop until you were successful. There's a great quote by Babe Ruth. I think the greatest baseball player of all time. He said, you can't beat someone who never gives up. If you have consistent perseverance towards whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, you will be successful. Now, you might have set a goal to do something in 6 months and it may have taken you 8, but you still were successful. You may have thought it was going to take you 5 steps and it took you 12, but you used consistent perseverance and you got there. You made it happen. Each and every one of you have already done this. I guarantee you, right? At least, again, once or twice in your life. So my question is, why are you not tapping into that more often? Everyone in this room, I guarantee you, has goals. Business goals, personal goals, everything. Why are you not tapping into that more? It's not easy. Certainly not easy. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you guys. We've got a couple weeks left in the year. We're at the end of the year, the end of the decade. We're getting ready to start a new year, a new decade. Do you want to look back in 10 years and wonder what if? Or are you going to say, I know that this one time, I'll be honest with you, that 17 pounds I lost, that's one of the proudest things I've ever done in my life. And it fuels me for every other goal that I have. Because I look back now and I say, if I can lose 17 pounds in a day, tell me what I can't do. I mean, and again, I don't mean that in a braggadocious way. I just mean, I know that when I use consistent perseverance, I will get there. And you will too, and you have. Tap into that, use it, create a goal, and make it happen. Think bold, start with yes, seek expert help if you need it, create the accountability, put the pressure on yourself so you don't have, you know you don't want to let people down, and use consistent perseverance. Because if you don't, you're going to look back in 10 years, and I'm going to open my van door and I'm going to say, you're living in a van down by the river. Any questions?
Ken, that was awesome. I would actually challenge everyone, this is something I do with my clients, think back 10 years ago to where you were and what you thought you were doing and realize what you accomplished in 10 years, because then you can say, think about what you can do. Like, tap into what you've already accomplished to fuel what you can accomplish in the future.
Absolutely. And start with one. Right? You don't have to make 5 goals. That's one of the things people do when they set goals. They set too many, and then you have a splintered approach, and you don't get any of them done. Start with one and go all in. Absolutely all in. And take those 4 actions, and you'll be successful. I'm very confident of it. Yes?
What made you say to yourself you wanted that spot up in pounds? Why did you think that so much?
Honestly, there was a record board in the gym up on the wall, and it was in my weight class. It was 450. And I said, I want to break that by, wasn't quite 10%. 10% is 495. 490. How you bench 495 and not go for 500? So that's what I did. I said, I'm gonna absolutely crush that record. I had no idea at the time what any world records were, anything like that. But that's how I set that goal.
So one last round of applause for Ken. I just want to say a couple things. One, he doesn't look like Matt Foley. But if you take a vision back and kind of open your mind a little bit, does he look more like Urban Meyer?
Yes, I was thinking that, yes.
You got 1, 2, 3, couple. Okay. But in reality, he's Ken Wentworth. He's Mr. Biz. Please connect with him on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. He's on the radio show. He's written 2 books. He's got a 3rd one coming out. This is his latest book. It's Pathway to Profits. Sounds like he's got a couple up here. I highly recommend you get it. I read the entire thing. If you want to understand your business, your particular business, and grow it, there's a lot of things he talks about. Growing revenue, cash flow pro, budgeting, do-it-yourself mentality, hire the best people, better negotiating, legal items, etc., etc., going on. A really, really dynamic book. Highly recommend it. It was a great book. Very, very good book, Ken. And one of the things I'll leave you with 2 things. Well, first of all, over by Cassie, there is a jar. There's a little, it looks like a vase. Ken did this on his own free will to come out here and speak to you folks. All right. So if you want to give a cash donation to Ken, throw it in the jar, but it doesn't go to Ken. It goes to Real Men Wear Pink, and he's on 2 boards, right? 2 boards. He's a chairman. One of these major events is Real Men Wear Pink, and it goes to breast cancer. And it's a huge organization he's been a part of for a long time, and he spearheads that, and he raises a lot of money for it, and that's where all that money would go. You okay with that? I didn't ask you this.
Yeah, no, but otherwise, I created a redirect for my page is this long for Real Men Wear Pink. If you click on www.mrbizfoundation.com, it'll take you to my Real Men Wear Pink page, if you'd rather do it that way. Because putting money in the jar is always a little squirrely. You want to do it that way. Again, no obligation, obviously, whatsoever. But if this helped you at all, I would really appreciate it. Again, 1 in 8 women. I don't want to go on a tirade here, but 1 in 8 women will be affected with breast cancer, impacted by breast cancer at some point in their lives. So I would ask, and this is what I ask every guys. Women are always acutely aware of this. Guys, how many women do you have in your inner circle? More than 8, right? So unfortunately, if you haven't been impacted by this, you probably are going to be at some point. So let's raise some money. And this not only goes towards breast cancer research, it goes towards things like helping people get rides to chemo treatments. Imagine having access to chemo treatment and you can't even get a ride there. It helps people get overnight stays and things like that. So
Yeah, very good. He didn't know I was going to say this. He didn't know I was going to do this. So I think it's important, and I think it's great. So thank you. Last thing I'll leave you with is one of his quotes in his book. It says, "The road is riddled with flat squirrels that couldn't make a decision. So at least keep moving forward in your business and take freaking action." Thank you.